Welcome to the Theory of Everything. In this program, we will presenting you theories about everything. And this time, we would love to digging about the life of famous figures in politics around the world. So, strap in! First on our menu is the life of the 35th President of the United States of America, John Fitzgerald Kennedy, often referred to by his initials as JFK. John Fitzgerald Kennedy was born outside Boston in Brookline, Massachusetts on May 29, 1917. Citing Britannica.com, JFK was the second of 9 children. He was reared in a family that demanded intense physical and intellectual competition among the siblings and was schooled in the religious teachings of the Roman Catholic Church and the political precepts of the Democratic Party. His father, Joseph Patrick Kennedy, had acquired a multi-million-dollar fortune in banking and as a skilled player of the stock market. His mother, Rose Kennedy, was the daughter of John F. Fitzgerald, one-time mayor of Boston. Before having a career in politics, Kennedy joined the U.S. Navy in 1941 and 2 years later was sent to the South Pacific to fight Japan in World War II. He had barely escaped death in battle. Commanding a patrol torpedo boat, he was gravely injured when a Japanese destroyer sank it in the Solomon Islands. Marooned far behind enemy lines, he led his men back to safety and was awarded the U.S. Navy and Marine Corps Medal for heroism. Back from the war, he became a Democratic congressman from the Boston area, advancing in 1953 to the Senate. He married Jacqueline Bouvier on September 12, 1953. On January 2, 1960, after re-elected as Senate, Kennedy making his first ballot nominee for president. Millions watched his television debates with the Republican candidate Richard M. Nixon. Winning by a narrow margin in the popular vote, Kennedy became the first Roman Catholic president and also the youngest president being elected in the U.S. history. His inaugural address offered the memorable injunction,
"Ask not what your country can do for you, ask what you can do for your country."
He wished America to resume its old mission as the first nation dedicated to the revolutions of human rights. With the Alliance for Progress and the Peace Corps, he brought American idealism to the aid of developing nations. During his administration, Kennedy had a famous speech officially titled The Address at Rice University on the Nation's Space Effort. Dated in September 12, 1962, in the speech, Kennedy further informed the public about his plan to land a man on the moon before 1970. Kennedy's goal was realized posthumously in July 1969 with the Apollo program's successful Apollo 11 mission. Despite his reputable career as a diligent president, Kennedy also has a lot of rumors circulating around him. The most popular ones was his secret relationship with a Hollywood icon of the 60s, Marilyn Monroe. But how did they actually met? Citing an article from IrishCentral.com, it had been speculated that the pair met for the first time at a dinner party held in JFK's honor in New York at the beginning of 1962, and were introduced by none other than Frank Sinatra, a close friend of JFK's. Kennedy is then said to have invited Monroe to a weekend at Bing Crosby's house in Palm Springs the following month, where they were not joined by his wife Jackie. One of the first points at which the rumored couple began to gain attention was when Monroe sang Happy Birthday to the President in a now infamous seductive manner on May 19, 1962. This performance is regarded by many as the proof that an affair was taking place, believing Monroe to have been luring the president to her with her breathy singing, and that Monroe's presence was the reason why Jackie was not at her own husband's birthday party. Monroe was known for her sexy performances. However, a part of the stage persona that she used for her performance character, while Jackie simply didn't attend because the birthday was also being used as a political fundraiser, the like of which she normally declined to attend. What the birthday bash did give us, though, is the only known genuine photo of Monroe with either of the Kennedy brothers, a photograph only released in 2010 by White House photographer Cecil Stoughton. After more than 2 years served as the 35th President of the United States, John Fitzgerald Kennedy assassinated as he rode in a motorcade in Dallas, Texas on November 22, 1963. According to Britannica.com, his accused killer was Lee Harvey Oswald, a former US Marine who had embraced Marxism and defected for a time to the Soviet Union. Oswald never stood trial for murder because while being transferred after having been taken into custody, he was shot and killed by Jack Ruby, a distraught Dallas nightclub owner. The incident remained the subject of widespread speculation. Some of the conspiracy theories are that the Cuban government was responsible, gathered steam after the Senate Select Committee to study governmental operations with respect to intelligence activities revealed that the CIA had made several attempts to assassinate Cuban leader Fidel Castro. In denying the allegations, Castro argued that such an action would have posed too great a risk of retaliation by the United States. Another theory put Johnson at the center of a plot to kill Kennedy to clear his own path to the presidency. Evidence for this theory was supposedly provided by a statement by convicted Watergate conspirator and former CIA agent E. Howard Hunt, Jr., who claimed that Johnson had ordered CIA agents to kill Kennedy. President Kennedy spent less than 3 years at the White House, yet he is responsible for some extraordinary accomplishments, said The Atlantic. In 1963, he delivered a speech of exceptional elegance and launched a drive for a civil rights bill that he hoped would end racial segregation. The bill became law after his death and seemed like a monument to a martyred president. We still have plenty of theories to break down, so stay tuned on Theory of Everything. Welcome back to Theory of Everything. In this very episode, we will present all theories about the most evil man the world has ever seen. His name was Adolf Hitler. Do you know that the man who became Chancellor of Germany from 1933 to 1945 actually were not born in Germany and didn't have German citizenship right before he was appointed as Chancellor? We will answer all the questions just for you, so be ready and let's get started. Adolf Hitler was born on April 20th, 1889 in a small town in Austria. He was the fourth of 6 children born to Alois Hitler and his third wife, Clara Pols. In 1903, Adolf pursued his dream of being an artist, though he was rejected from Vienna's Academy of Fine Arts. After his mother died in 1908, Hitler decided to spend his life in Vienna as a painter selling landscape and monuments painting. In 1913, when he was 24 years old, he moved to Munich, a city in Germany. When World War I broke out the following summer, he successfully petitioned the Bavarian king to be allowed to volunteer in a reserve infantry regiment. After the Great War, Hitler returned to Munich and led the growing Nazi Party. With his skilled oratory and charismatic energy, has helped the party to become more popular across the right-wing Germans. From 8 to 9 November 1923, Hitler, along with his associates from the army, launched a coup d'etat against the Weimar Republic in an event called Beer Hall Putsch. Although the coup d'etat was a complete failure and has put Hitler in prison for 5 years, the aftermath of the event has established Hitler as a national figure and a hero of right-wing nationalism. During his time in prison, he began to dictate the book that would become Mein Kampf, the first volume of which was published in 1925. In it, Hitler expanded on the nationalistic, anti-Semitic views he had begun to develop in Vienna in his early 20s and laid out plans for the Germany and the world he sought to create when he came to power.
Medieval Nuremberg, the marching, seething squash of Adolf Hitler's Nazi Congress comes to an end.
Beginning in the mid-1920s, they focused their efforts on winning elections. In 1930, the Nazi Party started to win more votes. Their success was largely the result of an economic and political crisis in Germany. In the July 1932 parliamentary elections, the Nazi won 37% of the vote. And as a result, Hitler was appointed as Chancellor of Germany by Paul von Hindenburg, the German president at that time. Hitler and other Nazi leaders used existing laws to destroy German democracy and create a dictatorship. In August 1934, President Hindenburg died of lung cancer. Hitler then proclaimed himself Führer, or the leader of Germany. From that point forward, Hitler was the dictator of Germany. Even though upon his administration, Hitler has proved the German people with some monumental achievements, including virtual disappearance of unemployment, the rising prosperity of the masses, the new social institutions, and the increase of German prestige in the 1930s, but on the other hand, Hitler was responsible for starting World War II and also the most brutal genocide in the 20th century called the Holocaust. Obsessed with the idea of the superiority of the pure German race, which he called Aryan, Hitler believed that war was the only way to gain the necessary Lebensraum, or living space, for the German race to expand. The Nazi regime was responsible for the genocidal killing of an estimated 19.3 million civilians and prisoners of war. The Nazis falsely accused Jews of causing Germany's social, economic, political, and cultural problems. In particular, they blamed them for Germany's defeat in World War I. Although Hitler and the Nazi German has always notorious to the Jewish community, however, there is an interesting story between Hitler and a young Jewish girl called Rosa Bernil Nino. In a photograph taken by Heinrich Hoffmann in 1933, shows Adolf Hitler embracing a young Jewish girl who he called his sweetheart. Known as the Führer's child, Rosa Bernil Nino became very close with Hitler after they met outside his house in 1933. Citing Alexander Historical Auctions website, Nino and her mother were in a crowd of people who gathered outside Hitler's home in Bavaria, Germany, to celebrate his birthday. After finding out that the girl shared his birthday of April 20th, Hitler was immediately captivated with her. The two still maintained a close relationship as pen pals until 1938, when Reich Minister Martin Bormann permanently halted their correspondence as a response to her lack of pure German blood. Throughout his leadership as the Führer, Hitler also has a secret love relationship with a young German photographer called Eva Braun. The couple first met in Munich when she was a 17-year-old assistant and model for Heinrich Hoffmann, Hitler's personal photographer. After 16 years of relationship, in April 1945, at the very end of Hitler's administration, she joined Hitler in Berlin, against his orders, determined to stay with him until the end. In recognition of her loyalty, Hitler decided to marry her, and the civil ceremony was carried out in the Chancellery bunker on April 29th. The next day, Eva Hitler ended her life by taking poison. Her husband either poisoned or shot himself at her side. Their bodies were burned. These charred bodies of allegedly Hitler and his wife was the one that sparks rumors around the world that Hitler actually did not commit suicide but instead escaped Berlin. This narrative was first presented to general public by Marshal Georgy Zhukov at a press conference on June 9, 1945, on orders from Soviet leader Joseph Stalin. Soviets believed that Hitler was either living in Spain or Argentina and that a charred body was a very poor body double. In the weeks and months after the war, Hitler sightings from across the world were reported to British and American intelligence services. Hitler was claimed had been seen in Ireland dressed as a woman, in Egypt, where he had converted to Islam, in a coffee house in Amsterdam, on a train traveling from New Orleans, in a restaurant in Washington, D.C., and many more. Furthermore, what do you think about Hitler's history and the implications on his action towards humanity? Leave your reply on the comment section, and also don't forget to give us any feedback. We still have plenty theories to break down, so stay tuned on Theory of Everything. Welcome back to Theory of Everything. Continuing our takes on the World Series, we will now do breaking down theories revolve around the leader of the Indonesian independence movement and Indonesia's first president, Sukarno. Sukarno was born in Surabaya, Dutch East Indies in 6th of June 1901. He was the only son of a middle-class Javanese school teacher, Raden Sukemi Sostrodihardjo, and his Balinese wife, Ida Nyoman Rai. Originally named Kusno Sostrodihardjo, he was given a new, and it was hoped, more auspicious name, Sukarno, after a series of illnesses. Young Sukarno went to a local elementary school until 1912. He then attended a Dutch middle school in Mojokerto, followed in 1916 by a Dutch high school in Surabaya, now SMAN2 Surabaya. The young man was gifted with photographic memory and a talent for languages, including Javanese, Balinese, Sundanese, Dutch, English, French, Arabic, Bahasa Indonesia, German, and Japanese. While in Surabaya for high school, Sukarno lived with the Indonesian nationalist leader Cokro Aminoto. He fell in love with his landlord's daughter Siti Utari, who he married in 1920. The following year, however, Sukarno went to study civil engineering at the Bandung Institute of Technology and fell in love again. This time, his partner was the boarding house owner's wife, Inggit, who was 13 years older than Sukarno. They each divorced their spouses and married each other in 1923. Inggit and Sukarno remained married for 20 years but never had children. Sukarno divorced her in 1943 and married a teenager named Fatmawati. She would bear Sukarno 5 children, including Indonesia's first female president, Megawati Soekarno Putri. Sukarno's nationalist ideas was first exposed while he lived under Haji Umar Said Cokro Aminoto in Surabaya. Later, while a student in Bandung, he eventually developing his own political ideology of Indonesian-style socialist called Marhainism, named after Marhain, an Indonesian peasant he met in southern Bandung area, who owned his little plot of land and worked on it himself. Producing sufficient income to support his family, with his fellows, Sukarno founded the Al-Khamenei Study Club, in opposition to the established student clubs dominated by Dutch students. With some of his friends from the club, Sukarno established a pro-independence party called Partai Nasionalis Indonesia in 4th of July 1927. Sukarno was elected as the first leader of the party. During his leadership, PNI activities came to the attention of the colonial government, and Sukarno's speeches and meetings were often infiltrated and disrupted by the Dutch authorities. Eventually, Sukarno and other key PNI leaders were arrested on 29th of December 1929 in a series of raids throughout Java. At his trial from August to December 1930, Sukarno made a series of long political speeches attacking colonialism and imperialism, titled Indonesia Menggugat. On that speech, Sukarno condemned international political conditions and the destructions of Indonesian society under colonial rule, making the speech a landmark political document against colonialism and imperialism. Sukarno was sentenced to 4 years in prison, which were served in Sukamiskin Prison in Bandung. However, his speech has gained extensive coverage by the press, and due to strong pressure from the liberal elements in both Netherlands and Dutch East Indies, Sukarno was released early on 31st December 1931. By this time, he had become a popular hero widely known throughout Indonesia. After prison, Sukarno decided to continue his career in architecture. Along with his university junior Roseno, they founded an architecture bureau to support themselves and his party financially. In mid-1933, Sukarno published a series of writings titled Mencapai Indonesia Merdeka, or loosely translated to Attain Independent Indonesia. In the aftermath of this writing, he was arrested by Dutch police while visiting fellow nationalist Muhammad Husni Tamrin in Jakarta on 1st of August 1933 and exiled to the remote town of Ende in the island of Flores. Due to an outbreak of malaria in Flores, the Dutch authorities decided to move Sukarno and his family to Bengkulu on the western coast of Sumatra in February 1938. During this period, Sukarno met Fatmawati, the daughter of the local head of Muhammadiyah organization, Hasan Din. Sukarno still in exile when the Japanese came and overthrown the Dutch East Indies administration in the archipelago. The Japanese then quickly informed about Sukarno and decided to release him from his exile, and as in turn, asked Sukarno's help to organize and pacify the Indonesians. On the other hand, Sukarno wanted to use the Japanese to gain independence for Indonesia. After a major defeat from the Allied forces in the Pacific, the Japanese military authority decided to set up the Investigating Committee for Preparatory Work for Independence, or BPUPKI, and Sukarno was appointed as one of the leaders of the committee. To provide a common and acceptable platform to unite the various factions in the committee, Sukarno formulated his ideological thinking, developed for the past 20 years, into 5 principles. On the 1st of June 1945, he introduced these 5 principles known as Pancasila during the joint session of the BPUPKI held in the former Volksraad building, now called Gedung Pancasila, located in central Jakarta. The Preparatory Committee for Indonesian Independence, or PPKI, established to prepare for the transfer of authority from the occupying Japanese to Indonesia. It approved and promulgated the first Indonesian constitution, appointed Sukarno and Muhammad Hatta as the first president and vice president of the Republic of Indonesia. The Japanese planned to grant it the independence for Indonesia on 24 August. But the Indonesian underground or the youths rejected any independence gifted by the Japanese, preferring to win it through force of arms. In the morning of 16 August 1945, one day after the Japanese surrender in the World War II, the youth kidnapped Sukarno and Hatta to Rengas Dengklok and forced them to declare Indonesia's independence immediately. Lured by the youth, Sukarno and Hatta then met the recurring members of PPKI at Admiral Maida House in Jakarta. At his house, Sukarno and Hatta began drafting the Proclamation of Indonesian Independence. The original plan was for the proclamations to be read in public before a crowd at the square in the center of Jakarta, now Merdeka Square. However, the Japanese authorities, fearing disorder, deployed soldiers to the area, and as a result, the proclamation was made at Sukarno's house at 56 Jalan Pegangsaan Timur in 17th August 1945. In 1954, Sukarno married a Javanese woman named Hartini. First Lady Fatmawati was so angry that she moved out of the presidential palace. Over the next 16 years, Sukarno would take 5 additional wives: Yurika Sanger, Heldi Jafar, Amelia de la Rama, and a Japanese teen named Naoko Nemoto, who later known as Ratnasari Dewi or Dewi Sukarno. During his life as the first Indonesian president, Sukarno has successfully led the nations under his influence and unite thousands of ethnic groups without any major conflicts and bloodshed. He died of kidney failure in Jakarta Army Hospital on 21st June 1970 at age 69. We still have plenty theories to break down, so make sure to come back for more theories of everything.